All right, I'm just doing a double check here to make sure everything's going. I streaming to a whole bunch of different platforms at the same time, so everything's checking out. And let me get this little chat window pulled up too. Cool. So this is going to Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, I think slash Hope. I can't really tell right now. YouTube and Twitch. So hi. I tried to put in the comments on LinkedIn, and I couldn't seem to do it. I just saw a message that said it failed, but I'm going to be talking through my last newsletter that went out over the weekend, which was about 5 things that I've changed my mind about. And this was a topic that came up in the live stream from last week. So someone had asked in the chat, we're kind of running out of time. I think it was about 20 minutes over already. And they were like, hey, it'd be kind of cool to hear about this. And I was like, yeah, I think that'd be a pretty cool topic to try and just share different perspectives on. So, of course, in in a career, there's a whole bunch of lessons learned all the time. Uh, how far do you want me to go back kind of thing. There's even from internships and stuff, right? There's so many different things. And obviously, if I'm talking about five, it's not there was only 5 things over the past, I don't know, like 12 plus years, 14 years of being career. There's a lot more, but I tried to capture a few things over a few different segments that I thought would be interesting. So they were out in the newsletter, but I still wanted to make sure I could have some time to go through this. And for folks that are new for the live streams that I've been doing, I very much want them to be, active participation. So I am trying to watch chat and stuff. So I think LinkedIn is the only one that doesn't have chat. Like I can't see that anywhere. So apologies if you're watching on LinkedIn, but if you want to engage you're on LinkedIn and I can't do anything about it, try checking out Twitter or YouTube and you can jump into the chat and stuff. So if you have questions, I will try to answer as I go through. If you've seen a picture of my desk, I've kind of posted it online before. There's a wall of monitors, so I'm constantly trying to go look around and see where people might be asking stuff. But I'll try to get to your question. If I run out of time, I will try to answer after. So definitely happy to do that. But with that said, let's jump into the content because it was kind of fun to write this. I thought it was a great question. And I know that in my newsletters recently, I've been doing a lot more talking about just like software engineering in general, or I guess the last 3 before this were really about how to get into career, right? How to get noticed, how to go through interviews, how to start off while you're on the job, whole bunch of different stuff like that. And I realized more recently I have been talking about a lot of software development, like the programming part, as much. I write a lot of articles and do YouTube videos on that stuff, but I figured it'd be kind of cool to touch on that in the newsletter a little bit. And one of the things that I did want to talk through is kind of a thing that comes up all the time, especially when I'm chatting with more junior folks, but this concept of inheritance and composition in programming. So I can't tell for who's watching this who is a programmer, who's kind of whatever tech background or whatever background in general you might have, but this is something that I think is really important to talk through because at least from my experience and the experience that I've seen kind of other people coming into industry, obviously it's not universal, but it still seems to be that the idea of inheritance in object-oriented programming is pushed like a lot. And I think that people gravitate towards it maybe too much. Like it becomes a tool that you use for everything. And for some reason, composition is not talked about as much, not used as much. Then people start to get some experience and they go, oh crap, like maybe I should have been using composition a little bit more. So to back up a little bit for folks that aren't totally familiar with what inheritance and composition are, when we talk about inheritance in object-oriented programming talks about like an is a relationship. So a typical example that comes up, and I know that it goes a little bit more in depth than this, but a typical example that comes up when you're teaching beginners about this is you would say something like a cat is a mammal and a mammal is a animal, right? They have this relationship between these types of things that is described by is a, right? A cat is a. A dog is also a mammal, right? The mammal is also an animal. So by definition, then a dog, you could say, is an animal as well. So you get this hierarchy built up, and that gives you inheritance. And the reason it's called inheritance with this hierarchy is because the characteristics, right, the functionality characteristics of the things at the top of the hierarchy, you get access to in the child classes, right? So the descendants in the hierarchy. I I'm not totally sure why most, and when I say most, I'm including myself in this mix. I'll talk about this in a little bit, but it seems like a lot of beginner software developers latch onto this. Like, this is the way that we must build things. And the pattern that I see coming up a lot with that is that people hear about like this like don't repeat yourself principle, or DRY, right? Don't repeat yourself. And the concept of that, I think, is valuable, right? If you are writing code and you find that you're kind of writing the same thing over and over in a bunch of different spots, it probably, not like I don't like saying things are universal rules, it doesn't make sense to me, but it probably makes sense that you want to pull that into a common spot to reuse it. And that way, instead of having like 15 different spots where you're basically doing the same thing, you have one spot. Because if there was a bug, you might have a bug now in 15 spots that you have to go fix up. There's a little bit more to this, so if you're listening and going, oh, like you're missing the point, like, sure, I get it, but one of the common ideas here is that you're just trying to reduce the amount of duplication in general, with nuances, of course. Now, one of the ways that you can do that is, like I said, you take your code, you pull it into a method that you can reuse, and I think something that happens, and again, I'm guessing at this, so if you have access to chat and you have different thoughts on this, please let me know. I think what happens is people see inheritance and they go, hey, look, I can have a base class. I can put the stuff that I want to reuse into the base class. And that way, I can have other classes that inherit from this to get that juicy goodness. I can reuse that code because it's all in the base class. And then they start making things inherit from that. And then they go, oh, like I just noticed that across these couple classes, I have more code that's duplicated. This is perfect. I can use inheritance and push more into the base class, right? And then you keep building stuff and you keep making more child classes. And in my article, I kind of joke, like, you get so deep into this mess that, like, what are you going to do now? Like, you have this hierarchy that's like 13 levels deep of things. You have all this code that's you're trying to push back up into this base class or something, right? And now all of a sudden you have a class that just tries to do everything because you keep putting all this code into it to reduce the duplication. It ends up resulting in systems that are just like an absolute nightmare to deal with in terms of testing, refactoring, extending, and for so many different reasons. It's not because the idea of inheritance is bad. It's not like it's an evil thing. But when you start using it as like the single tool to accomplish everything, I just think that it doesn't fit very well. And I can't remember who it was that was commenting, and I think it might have been on Twitter, but someone was saying, and I apologize if you're watching this and I forgot, the discussion we had, but this idea of like a rule of like 5 to 7. No, I think this was on LinkedIn. My apologies. I think this was Mohit. So I think the idea was like, in general, I don't know where the rule of 5 to 7 comes from, but like if you were to have hierarchies that were going past like 5 levels deep, and I think 5 is already like, that's a no-no zone for me. If you were having hierarchies like this, you literally start to kind of break down in your understanding. Like, it's already too deep when you go beyond that for the average person to kind of wrap their head around. And I see this all the time still in code to this day. Like, I'm not picking on the people that do it, because I did this too. Like, I did this a lot. And a lot of my experience early on in software development was building WinForms applications. If you've built in WinForms, the way that you put controls onto the screen and stuff, all of that is done with like a huge object hierarchy. And if you want to have more custom controls, you can subclass the controls and keep this hierarchy going. Like, it's an inheritance party the whole way. So I think a lot of my experience was that early on. And I can remember my first job outside of university. So I had 6 internships during university, which was awesome for experience. But my first job at a digital forensics company outside of university was, building digital forensics tools. And I can remember, I don't know how long it was into it, maybe like a year, probably less than 2 years, but I think probably over a year. I had been kind of perpetuating this idea that all of these, call them like plugins for a lack of a better word, all these plugins had this inheritance hierarchy to them, and it was like we just reached a point where it was like, this is ridiculous. We just cannot go down this path any further. So it became chaotic. You can't extend things. Um, Now, where I'm going with this, by the way, is that as I'm trying to help more developers, especially more junior ones, get into the industry, trying to, bring down the barriers to say like, hey, if you're interested in programming, you can do this. If they're interested in object-oriented programming, and I think people should get exposed to this. I know there's functional programming. I'm not trying to say one is better than the other, but a lot of people are learning object-oriented programming, and if they're going through learning this, I want to make sure that I do a better job of letting people know you have this other thing called composition, which a lot of the time can be a better fit based on what I've seen people use inheritance for. So I'm going to briefly touch on composition because I want to jump to the other topics as well. And for the non-programmers, you're probably like, what are you talking about? I don't give a crap. So composition is a different relationship when it comes to object modeling. It is not an is-at relationship. It's a has or is made of relationship. These ones are a little bit funnier to try and come up with examples, but it's cool because you can look around a room and just pick things, right? I don't have one of these in this room. It just popped into my head, but an engine for a car, right? An engine for a car is not just a one piece of metal thing. There is a block for an engine, which is a very big part of it, but the motor, right? It's not just one thing. You could say that a motor is made of, or a motor has, and then you could say that it has pistons, it has a camshaft, it has valves, it has springs. Like, it is made of these things. And I know that when we're talking about like inheritance and composition, we're not building, like, you're not going to build an engine in code like that. It's kind of a weird thing to say, but I think the idea of talking about physical objects helps a lot to understand these concepts. So composition is when things are made of other things. Composition can work really well compared to inheritance a lot of the time because you have smaller, more purpose-built objects. The code that's associated with those things, the functionality, is just a little bit more isolated, right? You don't have one object like directly depending on the existence of another object in terms of coupling like that. When you start to build inheritance hierarchies, that happens. And it's not a guarantee, it's just like it's common. But when you can start to compose things of other things, it's almost like you can swap the pieces out that you're building. And I think, again, if you're a beginner programmer and you're like, hey, like I've heard about composition a little bit, like I urge you, please spend more time learning composition, a little bit less time on inheritance, please. And if you are more senior and you've spent time teaching more junior developers, or you yourself had like an aha moment, let me know. I'd love to hear kind of like how I can help bridge that gap for more junior folks on shifting over to things like composition earlier. I'm just checking. I just realized I can't tell if my LinkedIn is. Oh, it is live. Cool. Okay. It wasn't updating. That was kind of awkward. Okay. That's the programming part. I'll get that out of the way. The rest of this is more about like general software engineering and management. So one of the lessons that I learned pretty early on in my career was about feedback. And in particular for people that I would consider like the rock stars, the good engineers, right? Something that, for context, because I can't tell who's watching this right now, right? I don't know if you've heard kind of a little bit of my career backstory, but out of university, I became a manager like very, very quickly. And that's not because it was like I'm amazing or something like that. It's because it was a startup. they they basically needed people that they felt could talk with the other developers well. And because I was there at the beginning, it was like, we're hiring more. Like, do you want to be a manager? Or like, we think you'd be a good fit for that. And I have literally no idea what I'm doing for management because I just graduated university and I've only been writing code and playing a lot of video games. So it was very new to me. And they suggested that because I am able to have good conversations and stuff and explain things to the other engineers, like it might be a good fit for this. So I had sort of a weird experience in my career because it was a startup. I like to tell this because I know people have different experiences in startup in their careers, right? So I was at a startup, and yes, I was working all the time. Big surprise, but the startup life for me, working all the time, was not forced. It wasn't like, look, you got to stay late and do this. Just that's not how it was for me. Like I genuinely loved my job, so it was like I didn't have other responsibilities either. So I'd work, I'd go to the gym, I'd get groceries and eat, sleep, and then I'd work. Like that's all I did, and it was fine. So for me, I spent a lot of time, I had to balance writing software and managing people. And if you haven't done this before, I don't know if you're a new manager watching this, right? Like if you're going from an IC, like individual contributor position, and then going into management, you need to understand that managing people takes a significant amount of time, and a lot of the time we're not really ready for that because we're thinking like, okay, I still got to get my code added because like that when I land my code, that's my value. So let me get that done, and then let me find the time for the people. Right? You're used to your value coming from your contributions. It's not wrong to feel that way. I think most people that have a technical background that go from a technical background IC into a manager feel that way. It's normal. I say it all the time. And I'm just no different, right? What was happening was I had to learn I had to learn to balance this, but when you're looking for shortcuts and stuff, like you're trying to look to get your time back. So when I would think about managing my team, I was very fortunate to have like very good engineers working on my team like my entire career. Knock on wood, like awesome. So what would happen is I'd go, okay, like I have to have these one-on-ones. I have to talk to them about like, performance and stuff like that. But like they're doing great. So like maybe I just back up. Like, why should I interfere with them? Because if I step in to do anything, like if they're already doing so awesome, shouldn't I just get out of their way and let them be awesome? Right? That's kind of the mindset that I had. Plus, I was like, I need to get time back to do other stuff too. Like, this feels like a win. Just let them keep being awesome. Just checking the chat. So, tip for so moving. Cool. I'll come back to this question. That's a good one. So yeah, it's like the assumption was like, if I move out of the way, they can continue to do good. I didn't make them good in the first place, so just let them do it. But it's a huge, huge error for for managers. Um, I think again, if you haven't done this before, you haven't managed people. Probably on the surface, what it seems like is that the really awesome, like awesome employees, right? They're top performers, always getting their work done, really high quality. Like they don't need any effort or time investment. The people that need the time investment are the people that are struggling. Like they have some challenges, whether it's performance, their difficulties getting ramped up, like interpersonal stuff. Like I think people think that those are the really difficult situations that take all of the time to manage. But the reality is like those ones, those ones give you the obvious things to do, right? They do. If someone's struggling technically, like what do? You find ways to help them on their technical skills. I mean, there's more to it than this, but the direction that you want to head in is at least more obvious, right? Someone's struggling with interpersonal skills. Interpersonal stuff is very difficult to navigate, but you at least know what to go look at and address, How you go do it, a different story, but you at least know where to start. When you have people that are just overall awesome, like where do you start? Right? It sounds kind of funny, but I think I have more experience now. I'm sure if you are watching this and you have experience managing teams, this might be obvious to you now too. But again, the idea was that if they're doing good, just get out of the way. The reason it's not that simple, right, is that those people, you need to keep engaged. You need to make sure that they're getting challenged. You need to make sure they're learning, and you need to make sure that they understand they have good career progression. If you just back off and kind of say, hey, you're doing good, keep doing what you're doing, you lose all four of those things plus more right away. Right? So it takes time to invest into those people. And it's actually more difficult. It's more difficult to do a good job managing those people because you do have to invest that extra time to go figure out, okay, what does get them engaged, right? They seem to be doing good on everything, but do they actually enjoy everything? Right? If they're doing awesome at everything, are they actually learning, or are they just like, I already know how to do this and I can crank it out super fast? Like, you have to spend the time with these people that you're managing to understand them better. What gets them engaged, growth opportunities, learning, like all these different things. So for me, this is a huge error. I don't know exactly what it was that made me realize like, hey, I'm screwing this up. I should be investing the time, but fortunately it was still relatively early in my career, probably a few years in, where I was like, that ain't it. Like, you got to spend the time helping these people too. It's just that helping them looks different than helping someone who might be struggling with technical skills. So that was a really good, like, change my mind about that kind of moment. So I wanted to touch on that. I'm gonna pause to go read the question from the chat again and answer it here. So this is from YouTube. What is your tip for someone who moving from employment to self-employment? How to find the right salary? Is there a formula for doing same job? Okay, I want to make sure I understand this. So going from employment to self-employment, right? So you're gonna start working for yourself. This is a tricky one. The and I don't know if maybe this was meant the other way around, but maybe if it is, going for self-employment and you're already employed, this is a question that I can't give you an answer to, like, other people watching this. The rule of thumb is just you need to make like X dollars and you're going to be good. The way that you need to kind of think through this is understand like the standard of living that you want to have, right? So if you are whatever salary you're currently making at, because you said you're currently employed, whatever you're making, if you're going, I'm happy with this, and going higher would obviously be nice. I don't think anyone complains about that, but you're like going lower, like absolutely not. It's kind of like, what is your minimum that you're comfortable with? You need to understand that. Like, I can't tell you that answer, but mortgage payments, car payments, utilities, like all this stuff, food, you gotta figure out what you need to be able to kind of get by. And the the idea though is like, if you're gonna be self-employed, like where is your income stream, right? Um, are you gonna be doing like contracting? And is that contracting like completely on your own? Is that like, I don't know what the setup, are you building something on the side that you want to be selling? Like, there's a lot of things to answer here, but the question itself was really about like finding the right salary. I think a good starting point is seeing what you're making now and trying to figure out your comfort level. Now, depending on what you want to do for work and what your work allows you to do legally, because I also don't know where you're from and labor laws and your employment agreement, like, you could be doing stuff on the side potentially. You could potentially be doing that. And if you were like, I don't know if I want to take that step, you could maybe start doing consulting on the side. Again, I'm not telling you to do this because I don't know what's allowed for in your situation, but you could try to do that and see, like, cool, in my off time, because you don't want this to overlap with your actual paid job. That would be bad. And no conflict of interest, obviously. But if you could be doing some stuff on the side and saying, hey, like, this is actually going somewhere. And if I were to, for me, I would want to make sure that I'm kind of meeting my own, current income level before making any dramatic changes. But I would use that as a baseline to kind of gauge how you want to make any changes there. So hopefully that helps a little bit. I just saw more chat come in, but I have no idea where that's coming from. And I can't see it, it's too small. So, oh, that is from LinkedIn. Oh, it's a comment. Cool, cool. I can't, literally, the the arm of my camera is just like completely over the comments on LinkedIn. So I apologize. Hello to Pakistan. That's awesome. That's really cool to be able to engage with people kind of across the entire planet. I'm hopeful that there's some other people on this stream that are just like from um, all over the place. So, hey Nick, I just joined a company and they didn't have standards on how they write code. I have a lot of suggestions to improve workflow. How can I present to my manager without appearing too pushy? Yeah, this is great. I want to. Oh, that is precious. Hey, you're from LinkedIn, I think, right? I'm the last name's not familiar, but and your picture is small, but I think we've exchanged conversations on LinkedIn. So great to see you here. Yeah, this is a cool question. A couple things to think about, right? I think the idea that you mentioned, like, how do I not seem pushy? I think this is important, right? Something that I like to think about, this is kind of coming from some of my manager perspective, is like, I'm going to come at this from a different angle, right? If Because I've done this recently a couple of times at Microsoft. I become a new manager on an existing team. I have plenty of ideas from my own experience about, like, hey, I wonder if we could. I wonder why we do this. I wonder, should we try? Like, all sorts of stuff comes up. But the idea is that if you go into something and kind of demand or expect change sort of thing, like, obviously that's not a good fit. You could come in with great, like, technically great suggestions, and people will naturally kind of resist them if they weren't part of that ideation. And especially if you don't have context from other conversations that have happened before you've arrived there. Like, there's I would say kind of treading carefully is great, but I also think that being quiet and not saying anything is not a good approach. Like, I always encourage people, I try to, like, if you have ideas about how to make things better, like, we should talk about that. I want to hear that. Like, you are on the team. If you think we can be more efficient, why would I not want to listen to you about that? So I think it's about how you present it, right? And I know that's kind of what you're asking. So what I would do is, if you're identifying a few things, for if this is about, like, coding standards, styles, things like that, I don't know how specific or generic you're kind of going at here, but what I would do is, have a list of things and some scenarios where you're like, this has been a pain point. If you have suggestions for those pain points, what I would do personally is try to chat with some teammates about this first, right? Try to solicit some feedback and see, like, are other people kind of feeling this challenge? Because a good way to, or a good thing to feel out, I guess, is like, if you are, and I doubt you are, but if you are alone in that, I wonder if it's something that you might be missing that they could help you with. But odds are probably some other people feel a similar way. Like, yeah, this does feel kind of weird that we have, 5 different coding standards, or we don't have any suggested ways to have, tests written for automation, like, whatever it happens. We don't have continuous integration and continuous deployments, you name it. Um, Trying to maybe get a feel for other people on the team and say, like, hey, like, do you think that might help us? Do you kind of struggle with this too? If you start to get buy-in from other people, I think that makes it a lot easier to have a case to kind of go pitch the value of it. Going forward with solutions and understanding the pros and cons of your solutions, I think is awesome. By the way, I'm trying to think about, like, if you came to me and you were like, Nick, like, this stuff sucks, we got to do better. I like, what I would like is kind of hearing what the challenges are, what your suggestions are. I'm not going to go implement anything for a team unless I've kind of heard that other people on the team are like, yeah, we think this would be good to try. So that's kind of my suggestion, is like, kind of, feel it out with other people on the team, come up with solutions, understand pros and cons, and then try to incrementally add those things. I'm really big on continuous improvement. And if you just try to say you came up with, I'm going to exaggerate, you came up with 20 suggestions and you're like, we're doing all of them. Like, how do you know which ones worked? How do you know which ones made things better? In your head, you might think they all will, but if you do them a little bit at a time, you can probably figure out which things had the most value. So I hope that helps. Let me know. We'll see. I'll jump to the next question. Update. My company wanted me to move to subcontract, so we moved to self-employment, all in USA. So I'm thinking ask 50% more to cover taxes. Okay. Yeah, that part I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know how that part works in terms of like adjusting, to go to contract like that. But yeah, the other, like, you need to be able to consider, does that feel like there's less job stability for you, kind of thing. I don't know if that frees you up to do other things, like if that changes sort of the demand on you. So there is a bunch of stuff to consider there, but ultimately, I think at the end of the day, think about the time you're putting into that and think about the value, like the sort of the income level that you need to maintain. I think that's really what's going to come down to. So hopefully that helps. Hello from Ukraine. Awesome. Sorry. And I got to move this over so I can see your question because this stupid camera arm is really screwing things up. Currently in the same situation. Client got idea from IBM, but he complicated the feature. So started working on Figma for more simple design. Client's not agreed yet, but I chose to speak with PO and client. Yeah. The You can't, like, I mean, my personal opinion is like just jumping into stuff, right? Like getting other people to buy into your ideas is huge. There's a really cool, I'm kind of doing a time check. I'm a little behind maybe, but there's a really cool ending to my newsletter that talks a little bit about this buy-in thing, and I'm going to use a different word a little bit later on that I think is really cool. And we'll chat through that. So let me keep moving along here, but it's awesome. People from all over the world. So who cares about levels and titles is the next section in my newsletter. And I feel like this is a funny one for me because this was a huge paradigm shift. And I don't want to, like, this sounds a little bit too aggressive. I almost feel stupid for thinking this way, but I can vividly remember just having this mindset. And I want to walk through it because I don't think that it's wrong. I think I have a very different mindset now just from more experiences, right? But let me kind of walk through it. So I mentioned that I worked at this startup. I was there for just under 8 years and kind of started right from the beginning of it. Not my company, but started right from the beginning, shortly after it started, and managed engineering teams there. And I felt like, I was working a ton. Like I said, that was not because I was forced to do so, but because I enjoyed it, truly. Like no one's like, like paying me to say that, or like I'm not like tied up like to the chair. Like, no, I'm like, I truly enjoyed working a lot. It was great. And the thing that I found is like, I keep working hard and I keep feeling like I'm being compensated for what I'm doing. Like truly, I would put in the effort and more responsibilities, like compensation would go, like everything, you put the effort in, the results come. So for me, I was like, this is great. If I just keep doing and I keep doing a good job, I keep getting the thing that I would expect. And I kind of adopted this mindset that like, that's all you need to do. And that's all anyone should need to do. And the reason I said I don't think that it's stupid to think that way is because I think that's how it should be. I think that's how it should be. I think I just got very fortunate that like that was reality for me. And it took me a little bit longer to realize like that's not reality for a lot of people. Probably for most people, it's not that way. So in my mind, what was happening as the company was growing was, instead of it just being a few people that kind of start in the beginning and, the cliche, like it feels like family thing, but like, I don't know if you haven't been in a company where it felt like family, like it's a pretty cool experience. That's how it felt. But you get more people coming on from, it's not just like, new grads and stuff. You got people that have been in industry for a while, and you have people start to ask questions like, hey, like, what does promotion look like? And it's a really good question because it was like, we don't know. Like, we don't have levels. It wasn't a thing. We didn't have the things in place that would like you would become like a level whatever. It was like you have a role. Like we had testers, we had software engineers. I don't know if we called them software engineers or just developers, testers, devs. We had product managers. I remember when we were getting project managers on, so like the two different PM type roles, people doing documentation, tech support. Like we had roles, but not levels. And it was it was really interesting because the first couple people that were asking about it, I'm like, whatever, like we don't have that. Like, and probably for those people it was an easy conversation too, because it was like, hey, do you feel like you're not getting compensated fairly? And I was like, oh no, that's not an issue, just curious. And it was like, well, again in my head I'm like, well, so what are you worried about? Like, why do you care about different levels? And the more time that went on and the more people that started asking about this kind of stuff, the company realized like, hey, we gotta, we need to start building a leveling system. And they did. Like, and it was pretty basic when we started, which is fine. It's a startup, small company growing. I think it made sense to not jump into it. But I never really understood why people cared. And then what started to happen is that I realized like we're in a bit of a bubble. Like in our little company, we didn't a lot of us didn't care, but the more people that were coming in, they're like, this is an expectation in industry. And what do you think happens if you're not planning on, or you happen to not be at the company that we're at for the rest of your career? You come in as developer, you stay there for X number of years, and you leave as developer. It looks like you literally did not progress at all. And you don't have any type of fancy title or anything to go along with it. So it feels a little bit silly, I guess, but like that's kind of how it was looked at, which is weird. So, I think it took a lot more exposure to seeing people come in and talk about like, you know, I was at this level before, or people leaving and being like, yeah, it might have been challenging to get a job because I'm at this company, I'm only at this level. And when I went from that company, it was between 2 to 300 people by the time I left, right? So it grew a lot. It was like eight when I started there, like 8 people. So it was a huge journey over 8 years. But what I realized coming to big tech was like that is an enormous focus of what everyone is doing is their level, right? They want to be able to grow in their career, and your career level is the way that you do that, especially to normalize across different companies. It's very it's very normal to be going to different companies, and I didn't really have this mindset at all before. So I never understood it. Now that I've been at Microsoft, like even when I applied to Microsoft, this is one of the really big eye openers for me. I'm applying to management roles. That's what I want to do. And I realized that early on when I was managing people at the company that I was at, we didn't have a manager role. Like I was a team lead, but not a team lead by normal definition. Like I had full comp view. I was managing up to like 13 direct reports at one time while coding. Like that's not a team lead. Like literally was helping, like being responsible for promotions and rewards and stuff, and like that's not a team lead. That's a manager. And I realized like this isn't representing what I was doing. So that was pretty awkward. And that was pretty solidifying for me about like why levels and stuff and different titles are important. So in big tech, it's a big thing for people. As a manager, it helps me work with my employees and ensure they understand they have like career growth, career trajectory. Um, it's I think it's just a good way that we can end up level setting on different growth opportunities. Is it the be all and end all? Like not at work, but the other part of me is like it's your career, right? Like you need to be driving that. You should be trying to grow in your career. No one else is going to do that for you. So if you want to continue to make progress, it's not like maybe some people feel guilty or selfish. Like, I've heard from new engineers and stuff that from early in career, I do some mentorship with them. And it's almost like there's a bit of guilt to ask about it. but like you need to. Like you need to be doing that. So yeah, it's just a lot of different eye-opening experiences for people that were focused on level and roll and stuff. So that was kind of one of the really big things in my career that just changed my mind about. Um, I can't really. This chat window is super small and kind of silly. I should have done a better job. Looks like I can change it on the fly though. Oh, that is from YouTube. Cool. I thought I might have had like an Instagram message. I'm not watching the Instagram live. I don't even know if it's working, so we'll keep going. Sorry if you're on Instagram. Um, okay, the next one in my list is this is gonna sound like a little like self-focused, I guess, but it says I'm bad at public speaking. So this was like a thing that changed for me. And I'm gonna use the public speaking as an example, but it's really like a I don't know, like a self-talk kind of thing, like how you frame your perspective and how that translates into reality. So kind of fitting because I'm doing a live stream right now. For years and years and years, I can remember being a kid in elementary school and high school. Like I would define myself, maybe not like the first thing I would say, but like a characteristic I would say about myself is like I am bad at public speaking. I'm bad at it. So anytime it was like as a kid, hey, like can you present to the class? Can you read out of your Shakespeare book to the class? Like it's your turn to read. I can remember every time like this is terrifying. I hate this. I'm so bad at it. Do your science project presentation in front of the class. Like put your hand up and answer questions in front of the class. I'm like I hate talking in front of people. I'm so bad at it. I hate it. Right? And I told myself this for years. And when I say years, I haven't done the math in my head, but from what, like as long as I can remember, until probably roughly the beginning of this year. Like for years. It was just my birthday on the weekend, so I'm now 35. So it's been some years of saying I'm bad at public speaking. And what's been kind of cool because the whole YouTube thing and content creation, that's only like I've only been trying to do that consistently since the start of 2023, and I've been putting out 3 YouTube videos a week, every week. And thank you for the happy birthday. See, I was fishing for the happy birthday comments in the chat, right? That's what it was. But I started doing these, YouTube videos 3 times a week. I was taking opportunities at work to do like mentorship opportunities for early in career people, like I mentioned, taking on mentees in general, where I'm doing some talking to like almost like talking to strangers in the first little bit, right? So these uncomfortable situations. I had one of the our partner teams on the last team I was on. They asked me to kind of speak at like one of their architecture sessions. Then I realized like I've been doing a lot of public speaking over the past year, and I've actually had people after I talk say like, "Wow, that was such a good job," or "Wow," like they would say, like literally say things like, "Oh, like how do you find the confidence to go speak in front of people?" And I'm kind of like, "What the heck are you talking about? I am terrified. I'm extremely introverted. What do you mean like you thought that was good?" And I started to realize it kind of took like a little bit of like a few of these examples to realize, but like I need to stop saying I'm bad at public speaking, and I need to start saying that like it takes a lot of energy for me to speak in public. I can say I'm often uncomfortable getting ready to speak in public. Those are real things, but to start saying like I am bad at followed by whatever, I'm using public speaking in this case, literally made it so that I would not take any opportunity to public speak. So I spent my childhood, right? Elementary school, high school. I don't really think we had presentations in university, which is awesome for someone that is bad at public speaking, but I never had to do that. And because I was bad at it, I avoided it. And guess how good you get at something when you avoid it completely? Not very good at all. You probably become bad at public speaking by not doing it. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's kind of like silly in hindsight. So I kind of feel ridiculous about this, but I was saying for a long time I'm bad at it. Then I wouldn't practice it, and then I probably wasn't good at it. I forced myself to practice because I had to make these YouTube videos. When I say had to, I mean like I chose to, like, but I made it like a schedule to do it. And now I'm doing live streams. Like, is it super comfortable for me? No, like I can't edit this. I've fumbled on my words a few times. I've kind of had to stop and think about what I'm gonna say, right? But like, I don't know, like no one's throwing tomatoes at me or whatever, right? It's all fine. It doesn't matter. So that took a long time. And the point that I want to make about this is not to praise myself for public speaking, although thank you very much. It's it's about like negative self-talk and that truly becoming like a reality. And I see this a lot with people that are trying to get into software development. I am not good at math. I'm not good at math. I can't do that. I'm not smart enough to do that. If you've been around junior software developers or people that want to get into it, maybe this was you. Like, if you keep saying stuff like that and you're not practicing anything, yeah, like you probably will be bad at those things because you need to do them. So I share this because if I think my wife's already gone to bed, but if she heard me saying that, she'd say, "I told you so." So she's right. She she doesn't like when I talk about things like, something that's negative, and I think that's fair. She's the really positive one in the relationship. I'm always like, what's the worst case scenario? Because we got to figure that out before we move forward. So a lot of how I frame stuff is negative, and a lot of how she frames stuff is positive. And she will say things like, "You will manifest this," and I'm like, that seems kind of ridiculous to me. Like, I'm not about to go summon something. I don't really know what you're saying, but she's right. Like, if you're saying like these self-fulfilling prophecies, like I am bad at this, it's not that saying I am bad at this just magically makes you bad at it, but it's that you start to believe it and you start avoiding those things. So I'm telling you this because for a few reasons. One, if you're trying to get into software development or any other, profession, you need some skills, that kind of thing, please stop telling yourself you're bad at it, because it's not going to help you. You can be totally new at it, and that's okay, right? Like, you're supposed to not be great at things when you first start them. That's cool. But that's the expectation. Saying that you're bad at it doesn't really help you. And it's not magically going to make you worse. It just means that you're already doubting yourself, and that's not a good spot to be in, especially if you're not giving yourself the opportunity to practice. That's one part. The next part is if you are already in industry and you're seeing other people talk like this, please remind them, because I think that's important. There's no reason that people need to be like, they're already kind of nervous about trying something. They're talking bad about themselves. They're not really giving themselves a chance. It's just not fair. And it's not a lot of work for you to let them know, like, hey, it's cool. We all start somewhere, right? Like, you're not bad at this. You just haven't practiced a lot. That's okay. Just practice more. It's not that you're bad. You just need more practice. It's the framing of it. So, about to lose my voice. It's not an ad. I wish. That'd be cool if someone paid me for drinking Pepsi. But that's going to bring me to the last one. Sorry, what I do is increase my rage, then go out and shout at them. Yeah. Yeah, if you find shouting at people helps with public speaking, that's an option. I don't recommend that for anyone else, to be honest. Yeah, so, oh, in 1989, folks, yes, great to see others that are all, maybe you also have a white beard like me. Okay, last one, get back on track here. This one is about sharing online. And this is a weird title. I probably should have picked a different title for this section. There's it's not the point is sharing online, but maybe that's how I framed it in the article. So I want to bring this back to what I said at the beginning. We were talking about selling ideas, right? This came up in one of the questions. Like, I think this is from Precious, actually. So thank you. This is a good question to kind of to cue this up. You have ideas as a software engineer or whatever other role you're in, and you want to see how you can get your team to be bought into that, right? You think that you can help drive some improvements, which is great. And what you don't want to do is just like demand people go make change. I think that's kind of expected. Feels bad. It kind of feels awkward. I think that's why the question came up. But you want to help drive some change. So the idea here is that you kind of need to sell other people on your ideas. What's the value to them? Like, why should they do it? And it seems kind of interesting to use the word sell, right? Because we're talking about being software engineers. We don't sell things, we write code, right? That's what we do. So the cool thing here, and this is actually I record. I don't know when we recorded this. I think I put the video out earlier. Today's Monday. This was last week. I'm sorry. It's been a long day. Last week I released the video that was a conversation I had with Anna Miller. She's someone that I met from LinkedIn. This is a really cool conversation because the topic of it doesn't feel like if you're a programmer or a software engineer, you're kind of like, I don't care about that. Like, why should I care? And it was about branding. And I want to tie this into what Precious had asked earlier. And the idea is that if you want to be able to sell your ideas, you want people bought into them, right? You need to have some type of influence, right? You need to be able to figure out what they're after, like what's the value that they're looking for and how can you propose that to them. So a lot of your communication, right? That's important. But when I was talking with Anna about this, what was really interesting was she was focused on branding. And in my head, like I went into this thinking, like, I know branding's for people in marketing, people designing products and stuff. That's branding. Like, okay. No, I had a little bit more insight going into it. But her whole point was about how you as an individual, whether you're a software engineer or not, right? You could any industry, the idea is about you have influence over your brand. And we talked about networking communication a lot and how that's very important if you're looking for jobs, especially right now, right? Like networking is incredibly valuable. I'll share some more thoughts on that in a moment. And when we were talking through this, I said, well, Anna, okay, like she knows about the branding. I'm kind of just trying to bounce some ideas around. I said, well, would you define branding as like your consistent message and the types of things you're talking about, how you deliver that? Like, is that your brand? And she said, that's not quite how I would say it. And by the way, it's in the video. If you want to go check out the YouTube channel, the interview with Anna Miller, the thing that she brought up was that it's not about like what you are doing. It's the observation of it. And it sounds kind of weird. She said it way better than me. So she said, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And think about that. It's pretty cool, right? Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And I hope that doesn't mean you just have a bunch of people talking about you behind your back, right? The idea is that when you're not around, when you are not directly influencing people, what is their takeaway that they've gotten from the other messaging that you've been doing consistently? So I don't feel like I was totally off with what I was suggesting the definition was, but I think that her point was really like, you can influence this and your brand is very important. Not only when you're trying to network and say you're on LinkedIn, because we met on LinkedIn, we're talking about people looking for jobs and networking on LinkedIn. Like your branding is very important that way. Like for me, I'm creating content on LinkedIn, so is she. Like, so it's a topic for us to, to go through. There's lots of people doing this. But it doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be you on LinkedIn having a personal brand, which by the way, I think is cool. I think you can get a lot of value out of that. And this is what I wanted to touch on after, but it doesn't have to be external to what you're doing. You can have your own personal brand within your company, within your team. And it comes back to fundamentally what she said. Like, what do people say about you when you're not in the room? So I think there's a lot of stuff that you can take positive action on that seems pretty simple, but you have to do a little bit of investing time. So when you're trying to network with people, even your colleagues, finding opportunities to communicate with them that's not like, I need something from you, can go a long way. So like showing interest, being curious. It could be with other roles. Like Anna listed off a handful of different things. Like if you're going to go work with a product designer, UX designer, right? Like being genuinely curious, going through what they put together ahead of time, like just genuinely being like the kind of person that you would want other people to emulate is probably a pretty good pattern for establishing a solid brand, right? You want to think about the characteristics that you want people to remember you for, right? Like I'll make it up, like maybe people will say Nick is curious, right? Nick is helpful, Nick is these other things. Like you can influence those things, but you can't just like command them, kind of like company culture. It's not like the CEO wakes up one day and he's like, our company culture is X, and therefore everyone just is the company culture. No, the company culture is the result of everything else that's happening. I kind of think about branding like that. But to tie it back into selling your ideas, when you have a brand that people understand as being collaborative, helpful, right? If you're trying to kind of sell your ideas to technical stakeholders, like that you are thoughtful, that you do deep analysis, like your brand can go a long way, and having people buy into what you are trying to sell them much easier. So it's worth establishing and working on the idea of branding, whether it's internal, whether it's external, and you're trying to go to a different company, that kind of thing. And to kind of close out that thought, the I've been talking about learning in public and stuff a little bit recently, and the idea that I thought was important to mention is like you can be posting stuff online and not be an expert and be learning, and I think it's a really cool way to network with people. And personally, from my experience over the last year, I'm not going to go into like the details of like every relationship that's formed, but like it's funny to say, like I'm not special in any way, right? I like you have different life experiences. All that I've decided to do, and for people watching this, maybe you are doing this already, so I'm not saying you don't, but all that I've decided to do is say I want to share my experiences with other people. They're not always right. In fact, I posted a video on Friday and someone was like, this is literally not right. And I went, oh crap. And I had to, over the weekend, I went and fixed it, made another video. So I mess up, right? It's not about being right all the time and saying, like, I have the best ideas, but it's a really cool experience to start putting your ideas out there and finding the people that kind of rally behind that. And they're like, yeah, like I like these ideas. I'm aligned with that. Finding people that don't align with that, but they're not like malicious, because then you learn all of these other cool perspectives. It's the internet. There's always going to be trolls, so you have to watch out for that. But you start to build up these networks of people where like there's people on LinkedIn or Twitter, and I'm like, they have a different belief than I do about the best way to do something or their preference. And that's cool. Like I want to learn why. I don't always want to be in my own little, my own little world, and I'm like, C Sharp's the best language ever. By the way, it is. I have courses on Dome Train for C Sharp. It's a good little segue to an ad, right? But it's like it's not, right? Like there's so many programming languages. They're all tools. It's all situational, and I think when you start to post stuff online, if that's something you're interested in, you're learning in public, establishing your brand that way of being curious and trying to learn, there's just a lot of cool stuff that can happen. So I've been very fortunate in my experience over the past year. I guess it's been like 16 months now that I've had a lot of cool stuff come up, right? There's opportunities with people I never thought I'd talk to. It's been great. So if you are considering learning in public, like I recommend it. I started what you're watching right now technically started in 2013. I took a huge break for a decade. I didn't do a very good job of it. But the idea was that I started trying to learn in public. I was a developer and a manager at the same time. And I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I bet you other people are also going through this. I will learn in public. And that's how I made Dev Leader. That's why I'm live streaming right now. I just took a break, right? Because I didn't know what I was doing. I gave up on the personal branding and the sharing and stuff, but I shouldn't have. And it's been really cool to get into it. So those are the topics. I just realized there's more chat messages coming in from somewhere that I can't see on my screen. So let's blow this up. YouTube dynamic emoji. I didn't hear any dynamic emoji. Cool. Maria, I tried to avoid speaking for a long time. Yeah, so introverted, but I wanted to overcome self-limitation after 50 talks, webinars. Awesome. That's so cool. 50 talks and webinars, became more comfortable, and the mindset helped. It's not about me. It's about the people I serve and higher value. Yeah, your why, right? It's a I kind of shared earlier that it's a framing thing, and even what Maria put there is like it's still a framing thing. Her framing was like, I'm doing this and it's helping people. I don't know if I found like a good framing the whole time. I think I just was able to keep myself going and then finally had enough kind of instances of someone saying like, "Hey, that was really good." Like they were almost asking me how they could be better at public speaking, and I was thinking like, "You're literally asking the wrong person." So I think it took a handful of those. Okay, I'm double checking chat. I don't see any other outstanding questions, but I'll few more minutes here. If you guys want to add anything else, I'm happy to go over it. Um, no, I don't want to talk about my white beard hair anymore, but it's there. Unfortunately, my hair is going away too. But happy to chat through anything else. If you guys got questions, want to hear anything else. It's funny as I'm waiting to see if there's anything else rolling in. The monitors that are showing the live stream are delayed, so it was like, I don't know, a really awkward series of me just like doing that to my head, and it's going to do it again because I just did it. Cool. Okay. I don't think there's anything else rolling in. Folks, I am trying to do this every Monday for now at 9:30 p.m. PST. That's the current time that seems to fit my schedule. That may change over time. So hopefully this is a cool time for folks. I'll be back at it next Monday. I don't have my topic picked for the live stream. Best website to check salaries, levels.fyi for tech. There's software engineering jobs, management jobs there, different big tech companies. Seems pretty good. I haven't checked recently. When I went looking, it was very accurate. This is 4 years ago. So if you're interested in that. But yeah, I am going to try to do these. If you're on a platform and you were like, crap, I didn't get a chance to like chat. Because again, like LinkedIn, I think it's coming in the comments. I can't tell. It looks like it. Twitter, there's a chat, but no one said anything. You guys on Twitter, just not talking. Come on. But yeah, if you're on a platform, again, Instagram people, I'm sorry if this didn't work, but it is on LinkedIn, it's on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, supposed to be Instagram, but who knows? But yeah, I will see you all next week if you're interested. If you want stuff discussed on live stream, you can shoot me a message ahead of time. Whatever platform you're on, just send me a message on that and I will try to follow up and make sure I can cover it. So thanks again. I appreciate the time. Thank you for letting me share some experiences with you and go do some awesome stuff. Take care, folks. Have a good night or